D.Min is going to speak from when she comes to visit with us on November 12th. She is of the Dominican order, and in their vision statement of 2004, when I read it, I went, yes. And here's how it goes, part of it. We Dominican preachers of Adrian, impelled by the gospel and outraged by the injustices of our day, stirred by the wisdom of God and rooted in our contemplative prayer, communal study, and life in community, we challenge the heresies of local and global domination, exploitation, and greed that privilege some and dehumanize others and ravage the earth. Well, here's a group of women we might want to hear from. So we invite her. She'll be here. Today's sermon is called Earth-Centered Theology. And it's not earth-centered spirituality or earth-centered religions, although we are grateful to those earth-centered spiritualities and religion and the pagan groups that have carried them through history, pointing to the value of the earth and appreciation of the earth cycles, and calling our attention back to that from which we have come under much persecution and ridicule. So we are grateful to those groups. But earth-centered theology is a bit different because theology has to do with the here and now and today, and analyzing and trying to understand where the voices of suffering come from today so we can adjust ourselves to deal with that for the future. So earth-centered theology is about the here and now and the future. On Thursday, we watched a movie called The Story of the Universe. And in the story of the universe, one of the main points of the story of the universe is that we are gaining scientific knowledge so fast, we are not able to integrate that scientific knowledge into our stories and into our myths to have that new knowledge help us. And how we integrate the new information that we have learned from the universe story into our cultural myth that's well over 1,000 years old is difficult. Myths give us truths, direction, purpose, and meaning. What we have learned about the universe in the last 100 years has yet to find its way into our cultural myth. How do we deal with the fact that in 1920 we weren't sure if there were two galaxies? The Earth speaking. We weren't sure if there were two galaxies. Now we've discovered since 1920 there are over 1 trillion galaxies. What do we do with that information? And how do we weave that into our myth? For example, some of the cultural myths of today have the Earth being about 6,000 years old, and they believe that carbon dating is a trick of the devil to cause doubt in the solidness of their sacred story. That's from more than one faith tradition. Whereas a smaller number of the population's cultural myth, we are excited about newness and learning new things, and we are excited about working in new information into our cultural myth and how it can help us in today's world. As we learn to work into our integrated story in this new myth and the new myths that we discover, this new information. However, the new information that science has provided about the universe and about evolution of the planet has yet to show up in a cultural myth that has the power to change and shape our myths. Furthermore, the legal system matches the traditional cultural myths and truths of the world rather than the new information we've learned about our planet, because cultural myths will shape our legal structure. Science has taught us that there have been fluctuations in the Earth's temperature over history. However, the problem today, the Earth's temperature is moving at an accelerated pace because of the burning of fossil fuels. We also have learned that the planet is an integrated biosphere and that every aspect of the planet has a relation to other aspects of the planet. The coral reefs are related to the rainforest. The rainforests in South America are related to the Everglades. The oceans and the trees absorb carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. It seems that the Earth is a single organism in which the human has developed the capacity to reflect upon itself. itself not just being human, itself includes the human and the rest of the planet. Integrating the new information into a myth could help us shape the well-being of our culture. Integrating this information is being a difficult task. One of the difficulties of integrating this new information into our cultural story is that the religious story of redemption that we have been under the influence for over 2,000 years is otherworldly. We are redeemed out of this world, and we are promised a new world. Therefore, the care of this world is not a primary task, because this world will pass away and a new world is promised. However, there are those of us that don't believe that there is a new world coming. We believe that this is the world we get, and that we have to attend to this world, to this planet. So developing a theology as part of a myth that is healing and therapeutic is the theological calling of today. Remembering that theology is a task. Theology is not a statement of beliefs from history. That's a religion. That's a cult. I don't know what it is, but it's not theology. Theology's task is to listen to the voices of the suffering, hear the questions that come out of that suffering, and respond not only with pastoral care to those who are suffering. That's part of theology, called pastoral theology. But theology is also about finding the solutions to alleviate the suffering and then implementing those solutions. Listening for the suffering of the earth in an earth-centered theology, we have to do more than just listen to the cries and the sufferings of the people. But how do we do that? We have to pay attention to the silences and the absence of life. It's not the silence of meditation or the silence of the divine light we find within, not that silence that we use to find that divine light. But there's a different silence that has happened in our civilization. It's the silence of Native Americans looking over a field and seeing thousands of dead buffaloes. It's that silence. It's the silence that was born after World War II, when the soldiers who went into Germany discovered the concentration camps. It is that silence that is pervading our culture. It is the silence that is heard when the great river of the heart of our nation flows down from the north and empties into the Gulf of Mexico, and we hear no fish jumping. We hear no birds feeding, because it is a dead zone. It is that silence that pervades us today. So theology must listen to that. In Western civilization, or from as Daniel Quinn puts it, totalitarian agricultural, the civilization in which we are part of, is human-centered. And I'm thinking, even reading our principles, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Maybe we need to rethink that. We believe in the inherent dignity of every aspect of our planet. We need to pay attention to our value system and our worldview that's promoting a human-centered perspective, because that has not done us well. When theologies are human-centered, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, when we have this human center that has a transcendent quality that removes us from this planet, I'm suggesting that we are in trouble. Whether it's a person, a historical person, a made-up person, or a written text. If these are the center points of our theology, then we are in not just trouble, but somehow those particular theologies lead us to a place where we can discount our well-being on this planet. We know that there are several theologies that had been born from what I call a dissociative state. When you have a theology that moves us to an otherworldly perspective, we have to ask the question, what was going on that we moved to this otherworldly perspective? We didn't always have, as human beings, an otherworldly perspective. What occurred that moved us that way? What occurred when Christianity moved to an otherworldly perspective? What occurred when Judaism moved to an otherworldly perspective? What occurred when Buddhism moved to an otherworldly perspective? What was happening in the world at that particular point? And what was happening was that the patriarchal society became so oppressive that the people had no place to go but within their minds and to project out relief and an otherworldly perspective. It was because of a sense of oppression that that occurred.